spelled that correctly. Cool. All right, I think we're ready to get
spell it right. Thank you.
Awesome. Michaela, do you want to get us started?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you especially to our panelists who are joining us and are going to share some insights onto the college application process with us today. So just so you know who's hosting this event, Drew and I are both part of New Haven Reach, which is an organization that was founded by Yale students and is now run by Yale students. And we mentor New Haven high school seniors through the college application process their senior year. And this is our first event and our first virtual panel type event. So we're so excited about it. And in terms of just structure, many of you submitted questions through the registration form ahead of time, which we kind of grouped into a handful of questions that we prepared for the panelists today. But also feel free to comment on the YouTube, and we'll set aside some time at the end to hopefully get some of those answered. So without further ado, if Drew, really quickly, just want to introduce yourself. I'm a rising senior at Yale. And then after that, we'll have the panelists introduce themselves.
Yep, like Michaela said, I'm Drew Beckman. I'm rising sophomore, and I work on the Reach board and have been communicating with all of these great admissions officers who so nicely volunteered up their time today for this virtual event, which is actually something we probably should have been considering every year without coronavirus, but was sort of prompted by the fact that everything is now virtual. And so we're really grateful for this opportunity and think it will be a valuable resource for many months to come. So Caitlin, would you mind introducing yourself first and your school, and then passing it off to another one of our panelists?
Absolutely. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Michaela. My name is Caitlin Locke. I'm representing University of New Haven. I've been with University of New Haven just over 7 years in our Office of Undergraduate Admissions, and it's a pleasure to be with you all today to share with you a little bit about University of New Haven. We're a private comprehensive university right over in West Haven, Connecticut, so not too far down the road. We have over 100 academic programs to offer our students, spanning across 5 different academic colleges. We're pretty famous for areas like criminal justice and forensic science, and we're quickly growing in areas like esports, cybersecurity, health sciences, and many more. With our school, we have a big focus on what we call high impact learning. So you can look forward to internships and research and study abroad and all sorts of great resume builders while you're an undergraduate student at the university. And we're very career focused too. So you'll see a lot of our programs lend themselves to that. And our Career Services Center has been recognized nationally by Princeton Review. So that's a huge focus for us. Overall, about 5,000 undergraduate students. So we're a small to medium-sized school with over 200 clubs, activities, organizations for our students. So things like Greek Life, Army ROTC, our marching band are very popular, as well as activities and programs from our Myatt Center for Diversity and Inclusion on campus, Division II for athletics, but overall a very welcoming, diverse campus. And this year was a banner year for us because we signed a new agreement with New Haven Promise. So we have some new scholarship agreements and things like that that I'd be happy to share more about. But thank you. I'll turn it over to Patricia for an introduction next.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you, Drew and Michaela, for inviting Yale. My name is Patricia Way. I'm an admissions officer, and I handle and read all the applications from the high schools in New Haven County, and I'm very much a nerd. I love reading applications. So if you decide to apply, you will be bringing me great joy because I get to learn a little bit more about you. So Yale is right in the middle of New Haven. And even though it might seem very familiar, I would still encourage you, if you're thinking about Yale, to participate or to join one of our student forums, one of our virtual information sessions, because I think oftentimes you might sort of think you know about Yale, but you've never really sort of gotten a formal description of it. So I would encourage you to do that. At Yale, we pride ourselves on being sort of of both a research university and a liberal arts and science college. I think oftentimes people are thinking in terms of ors. Do I want to go to a large research university or more of a smaller liberal arts college, or do I want to go to a school that is in a big city or more in a small town? I think that the nice thing about Yale is that you have sort of the best of both worlds. And academically, we believe strongly that students who receive a liberal arts and science education, that's the best preparation to be a leader, no matter in what field you end up choosing. And that's backed up also with amazing research opportunities. And Yale's library is sort of vast enough where we have collections that span centuries, but yet it's personal enough where every student can sign up to have a personal librarian. So that's one thing to think about. And then we're also very much known for our residential colleges. So even though students their home might be in New Haven, they still will be living in a residential college setting. And that's the residential identity is very much a big part of a Yale student's identity at Yale. And who's next? Kayla, do you want to go next from Quinnipiac?
Thank you, Patricia. My name is Kayla Dale. I am an Associate Director of Admissions, also the Multicultural Outreach Coordinator, Multicultural Recruitment Coordinator. Sometimes I mix that up because I do so much and I have a counterpart. So I deal with a lot of our outreach initiatives. My recruitment territory is the 5 boroughs of New York, as well as New Haven County. So I too will be reading a lot of your applications. And if you decide to come on to campus, say hello. I always enjoy talking to students. Right now we are offering campus tours on campus, but we're limiting them to a capacity of 10 people. And then also you have to abide by social distancing guidelines and things of that sort. So a little bit about Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac's a medium-sized institution. We have about 10,000 students, 7,000 undergraduate students, 3,000 graduate students, and it's been a while since I've done an information session, sorry, a 16-to-1 ratio. So for every 16 students, there's 1 professor. So we really pride ourselves on being a very intimate campus setting where your professor is going to know you by name, and that our students aren't taught by graduate assistants or a teaching assistant. It's their professor 100% of the time. Being a medium-sized institution, something that we really pride ourselves on is our sense of community. If I am traveling in one of the 5 boroughs, if I come in contact with an alum of Quinnipiac or a parent of an alum or family member, I always say, oh, well, what was that person's experience? And it's always, she loved it or he loved it, mainly because of the sense of community. It's big enough where you can meet new people every day, but also small enough where you can meet some different people. So it's a really nice setting in that aspect. At Quinnipiac, we have 3 campuses. So we have our Mount Carmel campus. That's where you will live as a freshman and sophomore and take a host of your academic classes. Then we have our York Hill campus, which is about a mile down the road. There we have our Rocky Top Student Center, sporting arena for ice hockey and basketball, and where our upperclassmen live. And then we also have our North Haven campus, which is our Center for Medicine, Nursing, and Health Science Studies. Our law school and school of education is also on that campus. So if you're interested in the health sciences, our PA programs ranked 5th in the country. We have a very much of a state of the art facilities as far as those health science programs, simulation labs, which I think is always amazing that you can manipulate mannequins to have babies and things of that sort. So it's really great that our students are learning the technology. So when they are in the field or doing their clinicals, they're already a little bit associated with the technology of the field. So traditionally, Quinnipiac is a liberal arts school. So we do have majors in history and English, social sciences, but we also are very well known for our health science programs, nursing. We have a school of engineering, a school of business communications, and so much more. We have a law school and medical school on the graduate level too. And then something else that I want to highlight about Quinnipiac is that we have over 140 clubs and organizations. So there's something for students to do all the time. In the fall, we have something what's called an involvement fair, where as an incoming student, you'll learn the different things that are happening on campus. And so you can certainly get involved. On average is about 35 events happening per day on campus. So I like to tell students, like, as you're coming in, you want to kind of slowly adjust. I hope to, delve into more things later on as we continue, and I am going to pass it on to Nick.
Unmute. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Thank you, Kayla, for passing it on to me. I'm just setting my 3-minute timer because I unfortunately inherited the grandparent gene, which is that you like to tell stories and talk forever. So timer's on, I'm unmuted, everything's set. I'm Nick Rajevin. I'm an admissions counselor at Fairfield University. I use he, him, his pronouns. I, do cover a wide range of Connecticut schools, including New Haven County. So yes, like many others, I will be reading your applications front and back. So every word is read, and I'm sure, like my colleagues at other institutions, we take note of those unique things that you've done in and out of the classroom. And so, as we'll talk about in the panel, and how to make yourself stand out a bit too. Just a little bit about Fairfield. We're a Jesuit Catholic university, and what's a little different about some of the other institutions represented here is that Fairfield is not necessarily like a Sunday school, right? Like, yes, we are Jesuit Catholic, but that means that we really represent more of a value-based education that balances the mind, body, and spirit in a student's experience, and also wants them to think about how they can be agents of change in the world by being people for and with others. I think that those two really important values of a Jesuit education propel our students into the 4 undergraduate schools, the College of Arts and Sciences, the Dolan School of Business, the Egan School for Nursing and Health Studies, and the School of Engineering. Just a quick highlight on those 4 schools. Our Dolan School is ranked in the top 40 in the country, and our nursing program is in the top 7. For Fairfield, I think what's really important, like Caitlin was saying, we want you to learn outside the classroom, right? Like high impact learning for life. And so, for Fairfield, being able to take advantage of internships and research opportunities is important in developing a skill set that is more versatile than just the stuff you learn in the classroom. That's where our Common Core liberal arts curriculum does play a big part into how that works. Just a quick story on how that looks like. Funny enough, there was a student who is now actually a law student at Quinnipiac, but she started her time at Fairfield as a biology major on the pre-health track. The reason why she switched was because she took some classes in biomedical ethics as part of the ethics and philosophy core requirement and realized that was really her passion. So really, to an extent, what Fairfield wants you to do in your 4 years is be more than just taking classes, getting a good grade, and getting a degree, but thinking of it as an experience that can help propel you to the opportunities that you want for the rest of your life. Meet new people, join clubs and organizations, and I have 10 seconds left, so I'm going to try to wrap it up, and be that person that you want to become. So that's my 3 minutes, and I'm going to pass it on over to, and I am so sorry if I butcher your name, actually, I'm just not going to say it.
You were so close. You almost had it. Leilani. Hi, everybody.
Leilani. Wonderful.
Yeah, my name's Leilani. I'm an assistant director of admissions at Southern Connecticut State University in New Haven, right by Quinnipiac and all of my other friends around here. Just Fairfield's a little bit further away. I am also a very proud alum of Southern, so it means a whole lot to me to be able to talk to you all about the school that I went to, that I just had the best experience at, and now just kind of being able to do that for my job is pretty cool. I am the New Haven admissions counselor, so if anybody in the New Haven high schools applies to Southern, your application comes to me. So I have the really fun responsibility. This is a big responsibility. I take it very seriously, just having that partnership with New Haven, working really closely with New Haven Promise and the New Haven school counselors to make sure that we figure out if Southern is going to be a good fit for you. That's what's super important to me, super important to my job. I love college. I am a college super fan. I'm so happy that I could sit here and just listen to everybody talk about their colleges. It's like my favorite thing. I could do it all the time. And I think when I do it, I hear a lot of things that make us similar. So it's nice to think about some of the things that make us different too, because when you're trying to make this decision, It's really hard, but just know that you have a ton of support, a ton of help, and you can always change your mind. We have a lot of transfer students at Southern, so I'll just kind of like go around some of the different things. About 40% of our population are transfer students. That means students started somewhere else and then decided to complete their degree with us at Southern. And for some of that, it's really on purpose. It's intentional because we have a great community. We have a great partnership with Gateway Community College right in New Haven, where students can start there, earn their associate's degree, get a bunch of prerequisites done, and then transfer them over to Southern. Oh, I'm so sorry. My watch wanted to talk as well. But we really want to make sure that students understand the process of degree completion. We have a very strong liberal arts foundation for all of our students. You'll take a ton of general requirements before you start getting into your major. And in the admissions process, we actually don't accept into majors. So that's just a thing to consider, because we, like the other schools, want students to take the time to really figure out what they like, what they don't like, and who they are as a person. So getting involved on campus, that was really what sparked and made Southern be the college for me. Is I got involved, I joined a sorority, I joined student government, and I just felt like I belonged here. And that's something that we really want to help students figure out, is that sense of belonging. We're a medium-sized university, not too big, not too small, just around 10,000 students. About 6,000 of those are undergrads. Our incoming freshman class is typically about 1,400. It's going to be a little bit smaller this year just because of everything that's been going on. But 14-to-1 student to faculty ratio. Intro courses are going to be 25 less probably students, because you'll really have that experience to work closely within small groups and with your professors. I could go on and on like everybody else. Like, we just love our colleges so much, but that's just a little bit about Southern.
Thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. I'm so excited to get into some of these questions with you all. So we're going to start with a question that I'm going to direct at Nick, but again, after he finishes responding, anybody can jump in and kind of share if they want to add. But our first question is a little bit general, and it's just a good way to start off, is how can students stand out in the application process when you are getting thousands and thousands of applications? And then kind of as like a secondary thing to that too, how do the qualifications differ for transfer students if they do at all?
Yeah, those are two great questions. The first one especially, and I feel like I want to reframe our understanding of the application, because yes, we get thousands and thousands of applications, and yes, to an extent, applications can be similar. You know, lots of students are involved in dance clubs, and lots of students are varsity athletes. But really, when it comes to a student's application, we don't read you, like two people at once, right? We're not comparing you all across the board and then saying, oh, well, that one looks different and that one looks different, right? The way we all read applications is in a holistic review, right? And so what that means is we spend a good amount of time just looking at your application, reading it from front to back, reading your essays, reading the recommendation letters you send, looking at your transcript, and considering all those factors in the context of your high school when we make our admissions decisions. And so to that extent, what stands out are a number of things, some of which you can't control because it's the past, and some of which you can control. And so, to that extent, I really want to encourage students to think about the stuff they can control is the more important part of the application process, right? You can't change that grade from freshman year of high school, right? No matter how hard you want to try. And I wouldn't encourage you to go try to break into your high school's records office and try to change it. That's not a good course of action. So, when we think about the application process, at least for Fairfield, I know some of my colleagues here have supplemental pieces to their application, which Fairfield doesn't, and other institutions also use applications like the Coalition app or the QuestBridge app. So I unfortunately can't speak to those applications specifically. But for the Common App, we look at the essay as a huge part of that application. And the best advice I have for you there is to write a good piece of writing that's not an English essay. Right, 5 paragraphs can work for English classes. For a high school, for a personal statement in your Common App, throw that out the window. Right, this is your opportunity to make that statement as it sounds. And I'd encourage you to kind of go about it a few different ways. First of which is to answer the question, right? Answer the prompt, but do it in a way that feels authentic to you. My second piece of advice there as well is read it out loud. Sometimes when you read things out loud and start to hear it with your own voice, you start to include a sense of cadence and rhythm and vernacular that makes you stand out as an individual. And the third thing is, don't worry about what topic you pick, because frankly, we recognize that good writing doesn't necessarily resort to cliches. And so if you want to write about your service trip, even though that might be one of those topics that's too cliche, write about it. If it's something that was really important to you, it's okay to still write about it. But again, the advice there is if you write the good essay and it's really a strong statement, then that will stand out. So don't worry about what you pick, worry about how you write it. Use your resources, right? Use your school counselors, use your teachers, use your upperclassmen friends, who have gone to college. Use those resources. Use New Haven Reach, right, to help you navigate that essay process, writing process, and don't hesitate to ask for help. Other institutions also, like Fairfield, invite you to write a resume or sit down for an interview. Those are other really great ways to just expand on who you are as a person and expand upon your leadership experiences and extracurricular activities. When it comes to those pieces of the application, I would also want to encourage you to think a little deeper, right? Don't just say I was a varsity athlete. Say what that meant, right? Like actually talk about some of those highlights that you had. And, if you're sitting here thinking, well, I'm not involved in 100 million things, that's okay, right? You don't have to do everything and more for us to know that you're really passionate about something. So if on your resume, you only have 2 activities, that's okay. And also note, activities also include jobs. Activities also include family responsibilities. Activities also include all those little things that you do in your community that might seem benign to you, but for us, it's just a way to understand who you are in the context of your community. The interview, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the interview because every institution interviews differently. Some institutions have like 5 questions that they ask, and some institutions just don't have any questions and they just ask you to talk about yourself. But my piece of advice there is that use an interview as a way to connect and learn about the institution as well. It's not just about them learning about you and trying to interrogate you. I hope no interview for you is an interrogation, but use that opportunity to learn about the institution as well, right? Ask the questions that you want to know, that you want to learn about, what type of student culture does that institution have? That's a great question to ask in an interview. So prepare questions if you are going to interview. And similar to how many institutions are doing it now, a lot of our interviews are now virtual. So you should be able to access those interview opportunities at any point. Fairfield, for example, has gone fully virtual for the fall semester for interviews. And finally, the last thing I want to just touch on is another way that you can stand out in your application is through your recommendation letters that you send, that your teachers send along for you. I recognize that, there's that, like, who do I ask? And I know the obvious answer that you'll hear many of us say is, well, ask the teacher who knows you best. Yes, but also don't hesitate to ask the teacher that knows you best from a struggle, right? If you had a class that you worked hard in that wasn't necessarily the class you got an A in, maybe it was a B+, maybe it was a B, hell, even if it was a C, ask that teacher, because if they can talk about how you put in the work and how you dedicated yourself to the curriculum, even though it was a struggle, even though it challenged you and pushed you outside your comfort zone, that's also a good recommendation letter. So the teachers that know you best don't always have to be the teachers where you got the A+ in. And I'd encourage you to also, depending on your institution that you're applying to, some institutions do not allow you to do this. Institutions like Fairfield do. Ask other types of recommendation letters as well. So if you are involved in sports and you've really dedicated your life to that, Fairfield, for example, will happily consider a coach's recommendation letter. If you're working a job, we'll happily consider your supervisor's letter of recommendation as well. So you do want to ask your institution what letters of recommendation do they consider, but also think about it from the different perspectives of recommendation that you want to have considered. So I don't know necessarily if I'm sharing information that's new to you, but I want to break it down in that those are the things you can control in your application. Those are the things that you can take ownership over, and those are the things that I hopefully want to encourage you to focus on. And those are the things that when you do well and you do put 100% effort in, will stand out as we read our applications.
Awesome.
So
Thank you so much.
hopefully that helps.
Leilani, do you want to add a little bit about transfer students specifically and what that application process looks like? Because we have been getting a couple questions in the YouTube chat as well from transfer students who are interested in how there might be subtle differences in the application process and how they should be presenting themselves and what opportunities they took advantage of getting an associate's degree or whatnot.
Yeah, so one of my favorite things of telling people about transferring in is that they don't have to worry about any of that stuff Nick was talking about. For us at Southern, it's strictly based on their academic work that they've completed. So we don't ask for a letter of recommendation and we don't ask for an essay actually. So the students complete an online application, which is actually pretty short, just really getting an understanding of where they've attended. And then we'll ask for a final high school transcript, but that can be waived if students have an associate's degree. And an associate's degree, so at Southern, and I think schools have similar things, it kind of gives you more, right? So it's associate's degree equals many more things than just the 60 credits that you earned. You're able to waive our language requirement. You're able to, you don't have to worry about like any of the different general requirements that your school maybe didn't offer that we offer our students. So it's really nice to know that when you're transferring, if you're considering that process, specifically from a community college, you're able to get all of your general requirements completed. And as long as you successfully complete to an associate's degree or have generally it's around a 2.5 GPA, you'll be admitted based on that, and you don't have to add kind of those extra things.
Awesome, thank you. All right, we're going to go on to the next question, which ties in a little bit to what Nick was saying. But Patricia, I was wondering if you could talk specifically about what makes a good essay. And maybe one thing here would be to talk about an example or an anecdote, because I think people often get caught up in these fairly abstract terms about what a good essay does or describes. And sometimes an example of one that you read and stood out can help students a lot.
Oh, absolutely. And I think people perhaps focus too much on the topic of the essay. And the topic doesn't really matter most of the time, with a few exceptions, because it's really how you approach the essays that's important. And Nick mentioned this, that you want to go sort of deeper, right? I think the important part of the essay is that they're reflective, they're thoughtful, sort of meaning you want to show, not tell. I think oftentimes people think, oh, they have to write about some major accomplishment or some tragic circumstances, but it doesn't have to be that way. You might write about them, but that's not something that necessarily means that it would be a better essay. And I think students should think less about what makes my essay stand out, but more whether the essay reflects who you are as a student and a person. So one example I like to give is, I remember sort of getting an essay from a student who wrote about sort of how every day he would walk his younger brother to school. And that's pretty sort of a mundane activity, right? It's not talking about, how you won this prize, or you're valedictorian, or you're captain of the football team, or anything like that. It's just, somebody who's just walking their younger brother to school. But the way that he approached it, we knew that family was important to him. We knew sort of what he learned from his brother and how he was able to sort of inspire and be a role model for his younger brother. And so in some ways, it's more like a blog entry, right? You're sort of taking something that is sort of an everyday event and reflecting upon it so that the admissions committee can get to know you a little bit better. And I think it's completely fine to hand your essay off to somebody and sort of get some feedback. And I think there are two questions that you should ask the person who's proofing your essay. I think one is sort of, what does the essay tell you about who I am? And have the person reading the essay kind of tell that to you from what they've learned from your essay. And then the second question is, does this essay sound like me? And I think that if it does, it works very well for a college admissions essay. And actually in the chat, I'm going to give you a link to a podcast, Inside the Yale Admissions Office podcast. There are actually 3 separate episodes that talk specifically about essay writing. And so whether you're writing an essay for Yale or Fairfield or University of New Haven, I think it's helpful because it's 3 separate ones, and it really goes much more in depth. So I will put that on the chat. Did that answer your question, Drew?
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to transition to talking a little bit about financial aid. And Kayla, I'm going to direct this question at you. So just what are the general steps for applying for financial aid? How do you go about differentiating between merit and need-based financial aid? Does it differ at different colleges? And maybe talking a little bit about your school's policies as well.
Yeah, great question. So for Quinnipiac, every student that applies to Quinnipiac is eligible for a merit-based scholarship. This last admission cycle, the scholarships were about anywhere from $7,000 to about $30,000. This is based on a number of things. It's based on how well you've performed academically. It's based on SAT or ACT scores. Now, I do want to preface that Quinnipiac also offers merit-based scholarships for students who go test optional. There's a number of students and programs that allow students to go test optional. So if you're probably not a strong test taker and your SAT scores don't necessarily reflect how well you've done in high school, then I would go ahead and forfeit it and go test optional, because you're still going to be eligible for a merit-based scholarship. Now, aside from the merit-based, we have need-based. So the earliest that you can file your FAFSA is October 1st. And your FAFSA is going to detect how much loans, scholarships, grants, as well as work study you're eligible for. Work study, sometimes students get this misconception that you work and it goes towards your tuition. Work study is basically an on-campus job. The federal government gives an allocation of how much money you're eligible for during the semester, and you work for that money. So you can use that money to like order pizza if you want, hang out with friends, do whatever you want, so parents aren't sending you money all the time. So work study is very beneficial. And it's nice because it goes with your school schedule. Like an outside employer, they want you to be on the job when they want you. If you're working through a work study employment offer, then you have a little more flexibility if you have an exam or midterms or finals or what have you. So your need-based, so it's basically on your parents' financial information. We don't require any supplement documentation. I know some schools offer their financial aid, they have to fill out additional documentation. You don't have to do that at Quinnipiac. There's an appeal process like most institutions. So if there's something that has changed in your financial position, sometimes, especially with this pandemic, a lot of people lost jobs and there was a lot of changes in income. And so like if that happens, then there is an appeal process that you can go through. Like Southern and Yale and the University of New Haven, we are also New Haven Promise partners. So we do offer a very generous scholarships for students who meet the New Haven Promise guidelines. And we're hoping to do more in the future as far as what we're offering for students from special populations. So those are some of the things that we offer as far as financial aid at Quinnipiac.
Thank you. And I think this is a good opportunity to do one of those quick fire rounds where we go around to each school so everyone can quickly give a 5-sentence overview of the general financial aid landscape at their specific college, because it does differ quite a bit across every university. So Caitlin, would you mind starting and then passing it on to one of the 3 other panelists?
Sure. So University of New Haven follows a very similar model to what Kayla described Quinnipiac having. I'd say a couple things to add in addition are some special additional scholarships you might qualify for in addition to that regular range of the merit or academic scholarships. So for one example, if you join our honors program, there's a little extra scholarship money. Likewise, our marching band, We offer some portfolio scholarships. So if you're applying to like an art and design program or music, those are some little extras that can be tacked on top of what you're receiving. Athletic scholarship as well. So if you're playing on one of our Division II level teams, there could be some additional scholarship available for you too. But otherwise, one other piece of advice is kind of get your ducks in a row sooner than later for applying for financial aid, because having a little more time to go through, say, the appeal process that Kayla described, or looking for outside scholarships can sometimes make a world of difference for you. So October 1st is when FAFSA goes live during your senior year. So put that date in your phone and your calendar so that you remember it so you can be on top of it. I'll turn it over to Patricia next.
Thank you, Caitlin. I think it's, when you look at tuition and room and board costs, those are pretty hefty fees, but students shouldn't let the cost of attending Yale stop them from applying, because Yale has very, very generous need-based financial aid awards or financial aid policies, and there should be no student admitted to Yale who says, I cannot come because I cannot afford it. For families with households with roughly $75,000 and below, and with typical assets, we don't expect your parents to contribute anything towards your education. And for those students, we also give a $2,000 startup fund to first-year students so that they can buy sort of what they need, whether it's you're coming from California and need a warm coat or a laptop, etc. We also do not use student loans to meet your need. So we do not expect students to take out loans. And I think 85% of our graduates do not have any student loans when they graduate, which is pretty amazing. So there's lots of information about our financial aid policies, but if you think that Yale is a possible college choice for you, apply for admissions, apply for financial aid, see what kind of financial aid award you get. But our financial aid policies are very generous. And how about Leilani? I love that name. It sounds very Hawaiian.
Thank you. It is Hawaiian. It means lovely flower, heavenly flower, something like that. But thank you so much. And Yale is like the other school that I love because my sister went there. So we both love to support New Haven in our own very unique ways. So I love to hear everything about Yale. And for financial aid at Southern, I would say we are different. We are a state university. We're very much accessible. Our overall tuition for, one academic year is about $11,000. So it's going to cost a lot less. And I think that that's something that's important for students to consider, especially if they want to stay close to home and don't want to pay to live on campus. But of course, financial aid, need-based, there's a lot of support there. Of course, we had COVID support this year. We'll probably continue to see that a little bit more. Additional funding that we could support our students with. Work study, having students work on campus. We try to get a lot of students to work on campus, separate from your financial aid package, but just to help you get through. We have a lot of working students at Southern. That's just part of our population. So if you think about like our student profile, that's a typical Southern student, has a job and is working through college. And we really try to help support that by making sure students can have jobs on campus. And then I would say there's also a ton of support. So this year, making sure our students have access to laptops if they don't have Wi-Fi at home. So there's just a lot of support, even just aside from the financial aid tuition bill, that we're able to help with students so that they can be successful and that they can access their, their education as best to their ability. How about Nick, right? That's who's left.
I think so. Yeah, so I think similar to everyone here, right? We all require the FAFSA for financial aid. Fairfield does require the CSS profile, which is an additional supplemental document that you can access through the College Board website. I will say that if you are sitting here thinking like, okay, that's a lot of stuff that I'm gonna have to put together. We get it, right? Fairfield does recognize that these documents are not, they're not easy to get through just by going through the motions. And so don't hesitate to be in touch with, your respective financial aid counselors. So, every institution has a financial aid office. Some institutions actually make their admissions counselors be financial aid counselors too. So figure out which institutions do that as well. But reach out to those financial aid officers and ask for help. I mean, it can be something like, hey, I don't know, what this document is. I mean, if you don't know what that document is, don't try to submit one, because you don't want the IRS to start coming after you or anything, right? This is not the time to do that. So don't hesitate to ask for help. Fairfield does consider students for student loans as well as work study like other institutions. And we do consider students for merit scholarships with their application, whether or not they submit test scores. So similar to Kayla, at Quinnipiac, we don't require test scores to have a merit scholarship be awarded to a student. Also ask colleges if they do that. Some institutions do require you to submit your test scores to be considered for merit scholarships. And so just kind of keep that running list in your head of what institutions you're applying to, whether test optional is applicable to admission and scholarship. But with that being said, I think my colleagues really covered it well. So I'll turn it on to the next question.
I just want to quickly, and just as like a very kind of fire round type question, Kayla, I'm going to ask you just how does the process differ for international students who want to apply for these scholarships? Are they eligible for a lot of these merit scholarships and need-based scholarships that we're talking about?
That's an excellent question. So for international students, they would be eligible for merit-based scholarships because it's just based on their performance through high school. As far as federal financial aid, they would not be eligible for that. You would have to be a United States citizen for financial aid. But I know for Quinnipiac, we do make special adjustments for students who are international to kind of supplement that cost factor.
Okay, thank you. All right, so for our next question, this is going to be more of a COVID specific question, but Leilani, just about the test optional policy. Well, actually, we're going to start this off by doing a fire round again for all of the panelists to just quickly go over how are test policies changing at your school in response to COVID. And then after that, Leilani, you'll be able to just go into a little bit more detail about how that's going to impact the way that you guys read on that other end, the applications.
Okay, so I think that this was one of the things that if we can look at positives that came out of COVID, we've been wanting to go to test optional for a long time and didn't really have the university support until now. So we're really excited. It's getting put into practice or getting put into play a little bit now, but it will be an official policy released very soon, but we won't be requiring test scores for students. The one exception, and this is I think a bunch of us can talk about it very separately and probably not right now, would be nursing. We do have kind of like a direct admit for nursing, and that would and then our honors college, but we do think we're going to make honors college work without SAT scores or test scores. But yeah, so this year we're moving forward and we plan to keep it that way. Specific programs will have these requirements, but merit-based scholarships, same thing. We won't require the test scores at Southern. Are people just going around? Caitlin, you go.
So University of New Haven test option year. So for those of you that are heading into senior year, this will be our second go around being test optional. Really different from year to this year. We did have a couple programs that required the test scores, but we did waive that requirement. So all academic majors are test optional, honors program test optional. Our dual degree programs will be test optional. So if you're looking to do like a 4+1 or a 3+2, you can gain entry to those without test scores. As of now, I think the only thing that students will eventually need to submit scores for is if they're joining a Division II athletic team with us. They can still be admitted to the university without the test scores, but for the clearinghouse, I think right now they're still requiring the scores, but stay tuned. That could potentially change. We'll see. I'll turn that over to Patricia.
Thank you, Caitlin. So for this upcoming year, for the SAT subject exams, we are not considering those. So even if you've taken them, you cannot, you don't report those. And even if you do, we're not going to look at them. We're not going to take them into consideration. For the SATs or ACTs, those are optional. If you want to send them in, you can. If you don't want to send them in, you don't have to. And when we review the applications, we are not going to penalize students who do not submit the scores or give the students who submit the scores sort of more benefit. We are just going to base the admissions review on the other materials in your application file. And Kayla?
Thank you. So for Quinnipiac, we are going test optional for all majors except for our PA program because it's one of the more competitive programs. We get a lot of applications and we only have 25 seats. So they need some type of metric to determine the process and to help them deciding on students. Caitlin did make a reference to dual degree programs, like 3+1 programs, 4+1 programs. That just simply means that you can get a master's and an undergraduate degree at the same time. We have a number of dual degree programs as well, and I'll leave a link to those in the chat section. But yes, we are also going test optional.
I guess I'm last, maybe? Yes? Okay. Yeah, so Fairfield's been test optional for about 9 years at this point. That's included all of our programs, including nursing, business, and engineering. The way we consider a student who is test optional is just by looking at your transcript. We recognize it for a number of reasons. You know, a student's test score isn't representative of their potential in college. And so we do then say, well, then your transcript where you've put in 3 in a little bit of years of academic work might be a better indicator, which statistically, at least for Fairfield, we have seen that have a correlation. So we are test optional in the admission process and the financial aid merit scholarship process, like I talked about. When we consider a test score, when do you submit or when do you not submit? That's truly a personal decision and one that I would encourage you to make in consultation with your school counselor, with your mentors here at New Haven Reach, by talking to folks. Don't try to make that decision by yourself in a vacuum. There is no perfect answer for that, right? So this is totally an individual choice that you would make. And finally, yes, like I think Caitlin mentioned, Fairfield is a D1 school, so similar to D2 schools, the NCAA does require all students to submit their test scores, but that's only for like record keeping purposes by the NCAA, so it wouldn't affect your admission at all. But that's how test optional kind of works at Fairfield. And again, happy to talk a little bit more about that if you have any further questions. But yeah, it's good to see a lot of more institutions going test optional now.
Awesome. Thank you all. Caitlin, now we're going to shift a little bit away from the nitty-gritty about the application process and academic life and talk more broadly about what a student should be looking at outside of the classroom in a non-academic context when they're applying to a school. And so broadly, what would you say students should be looking at, especially now when many campuses are not open for tours, though some are? And then maybe you could speak a little bit about 1 or 2 distinctive things that University of New Haven offers outside of the classroom that might interest students, and then we can do a similar pass around all the panelists, and each person can contribute a couple interesting non-academic extracurricular opportunities that they'd like to share at their university.
Sure. So there's a lot of factors to consider, not just when you make your college decision, but right now, as you're building that list of which schools you're going to apply to, the size of the institution is one. So how many students, there's tiny schools out there, there's very large schools out there, and not every school is going to be the perfect fit for every student. I know that's a tough one to gauge being virtual, but that's something that, should be thought about, should be considered in that process. I'd say the location, the proximity to home is another big one. The greater area around the campus. So is there access to a city? Is there access to public transportation? Things like that are big for students. Cost of attendance, of course, but I'd say don't rule that out at this point, as you want to make sure you go through the scholarship and financial aid process. That'll give you a lot more clarity as to what your individual cost of attendance will be. It's tough to gauge things like campus atmosphere being from home, but I'll say we've been doing a ton of these virtual programs, and we bring our current students onto those. We do live virtual campus tours where you're actually interacting with a current student. So you can kind of get some of that vibe through the screens, even though it's a little bit different than walking around campus and seeing everything in action. A couple other things I'd say, activities, clubs, sports that you're passionate about, look for schools that may have some of those that you're interested in, leadership opportunities, housing options. If you're looking for a school that's religiously affiliated, certain options for diversity and inclusion programs in that nature are very important too. So there's a lot, and every single one of those is going to be falling a different place on the list for every student. So it's important to think about what your priorities are. In terms of getting out there and visiting some schools at this time, like I said, we have these virtual programs at least a few times a week, big virtual open houses where you can interact with faculty members, different offices on campus, so residential life and programs like that. We're doing a few limited on-campus options. We have one-on-one visits where you can come and meet with an admissions counselor very safely in person and do an individualized campus tour. So there's certainly some ways to get a feel for the atmosphere and the location and the size of the campus, even though it's a little different than what we traditionally do. And I'd say lastly, a couple things that activities and things that our students get involved in. One that's huge for us, and usually you hear them every corner of campus this time of year, is our marching band. They are very well known in the area. We're considered one of the fastest growing collegiate level marching bands. So a couple hundred students are usually on campus now, moved in, practicing in all the different corners. Sometimes I'm in my office and it's impossible to make a phone call because the drum section is outside my window that day. So it's really fun. They bring a lot of energy to football games and things on campus. So it'll be interesting to see how things adjust with COVID this year, and how students still stay passionate in their areas despite things being a little different. One other one I'd say, Greek life is very popular on campus as well. There's several different sororities and fraternities that students can get involved in, and they do a lot of fundraising. So each year they do an Up Till Dawn campaign for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. And while we're a smaller size school with a smaller size Greek life department, it's really incredible. They land on the top of some of these lists for the amount of fundraising that they do because they're just so passionate about it. So, did I answer every part of your question, Drew? Awesome. We're going round robin. I'll pass it on to Patricia.
Thank you, Caitlin. I guess I will talk perhaps a little bit about sort of residential college life, because I think that can give you sort of a really good idea of the culture and all of that. I think at Yale, we have what are called residential colleges. And for those people who have not heard of the term, it can be a little bit confusing because even though there's the word college in there, there's nothing really academic about the residential colleges. Essentially, it's a form of housing, but it's a lot more than that. And students are randomly assigned to a residential college for all 4 years. And the reason why we do that is because we want the colleges to reflect the diversity of the rest of the campus. We don't want a college to be primarily students from Connecticut, or one that's primarily international students, or one that's primarily athletes, or one that's primarily physicists. We really want them to reflect the diversity of the rest of the campus, and I think that it does that very well. And within each residential college, there are 2 faculty members that live there, and they're also residential college fellows, and they're really there to serve as resources for the students. And in addition to the head of the college and the residential college dean, there are residential college fellows, and they could be faculty members, they could be administrators. In Brantford College, Professor Altman was a Nobel laureate in medicine, and he lives in Brantford College, and he's there for the undergraduates. And students really sort of develop this bond with their college from the moment that they step foot on campus. And when you see alums, they meet each other, they haven't, they don't know each other. The first thing they'll say was, oh, I'm Patricia Way. I, graduated from this year and I was in Berkeley College, or I was in Davenport College. And if you were to ask your Reach mentors, Yale students, and say, oh, what college are you in? Usually, and Michaela and Drew, you could tell me if I'm wrong, they'll say that theirs is the best for whatever reason. If they're from different colleges, they'll have a fight about what's the best residential college. So your college puts you in a smaller community within a larger university setting. And just the strong sense of community that is built from being part of a residential college is, I think, something that's very special.
I think she said Kayla. Okay. So I kind of started my whole introduction with this is about the Quinnipiac community, and it's very tight knit. Students really enjoy their experience there because we are medium size. A lot of times when students are taking tours of the campus, they say like they felt at home when they were on our campus. And I think that is a part of why a lot of students decide to commit to us. A lot of it is also word of mouth. So we have a lot of students from New York, New Jersey, Mass, and of course, Connecticut. So they hear about others' experience at Quinnipiac, and that has been a huge, I would say, marketing factor for us. But some other things I would say that are non-academic about Quinnipiac is that, as I mentioned before, there's always something to do on campus. We are also Division I and 21 athletics. Quinnipiac is very popular for hockey. Ice hockey is a premier sport for us. So a lot of students do go to the sporting events. And then again, those clubs and organizations, we also have fraternities and sororities on campus, but they are community service based. And I think it's great that our students are thinking of ways to give back to the general community. A club and organization that I like to talk about is the Big Event. And what students do is they outreach to the different sectors in New Haven and they find out how they can give back. I think it's great that our students are thinking about how to pay it forward, and a lot of them not even being from New Haven and wanting to give back to New Haven County, I think is awesome. But a lot of what my colleagues discuss, I do think that there are a lot of similarities. Quinnipiac is a residential campus as well. So we don't a term used in higher education a lot is like a backpack school or a suitcase school where students generally go home on the weekends. You'll find that at Quinnipiac, students don't go home until the holiday. And when they do go home, they're dying to come back because they love their experience so much. So I think that there are a lot of similarities between the other institutions that are here as well to talk about like what students love about us and why students decide to come to us other than those academic factors. I'll pass it to Nick. I think you're the last one, Nick.
Second to last, but yeah. So non-academic factors, those are just as important. Do not sleep on them. When it comes to non-academic factors, I think, like Caitlin mentioned, prioritize your list. And then talk to your parents too, because, not that your parents are going to like tell you where to go to college, but if they are going to pay for a little bit of it or are going to chip in some capacity, you want them to know that you're doing all right and that you're happy and everything. And sometimes just having that communication between parents and students is important. So do that. I'd encourage you to at least try that. When it comes to some of the things that I see students at Fairfield, saying this is why I came to Fairfield. Community is number one. I don't love just like an aside, I don't love rankings, but for this ranking, I'll give it a big shout out. Fairfield was named top 20 colleges and universities in the country for happiest students. I love that. Like, I see that all the time. I have never walked across campus and not seen at least like 30 people smiling, 20 of them having a Fairfield sweatshirt or t-shirt on. I think that school pride is important. And I think students really like that there is that campus feel. You know, there are some like little things that I think make Fairfield a little unique. For example, we're about a mile and a half from the Fairfield beach. And so in senior year, about half of our seniors will live at the beach, like on the water at the beach. And so, you know, that's a fun perk there too. But, you know, I think generally, like Caitlin was mentioning, yes, it's difficult to get that feel for what an institution is like, especially due to COVID, but don't hesitate to utilize us admissions officers as resources and helping connect you to those students that you want to chat with. Don't hesitate to use those friends or family members that you know who might have gone to the institutions you're looking at as resources as well. And you know, I can promise you one thing, if you are admitted to an institution, we want you to come to our institution. So come spring, we will be trying to engage with you in a variety of different ways on social media, you know, in events and programming, sending you free stuff. So, you know, enjoy that time as you make your decision, as stressful as it might be. And passing it on to Leilani.
Thank you. And I'll be quick because I think we covered so much. But I just think like for Southern, the close-knit community is something that I could never just like not talk about. Just thinking about all the resources that we have on campus and the people that we connect you to. So I think about Nick as the director of counseling. And if you have an issue, you can go and talk to him about it. Katie and Nicole in the Academic Success Center, if you need tutoring, these are people that we'll connect you with. We're really like people to people connecting. And that's something that's really important to us because a lot of resources on campus are so important for students to be successful outside of the classroom, but sometimes students don't take advantage of them. And when they do take advantage of them, it's just like the possibilities are endless of what you can do, what you can accomplish. And once you pay for tuition, basically everything is free. So take advantage of it. Go to counseling services, go to the wellness center, get tutoring. We have a great disability resource center. There's just so many resources for students to be successful outside of the classroom that I do think impacts that decision making, that you want to make sure that you have those resources, you have those connections, and we try to make them as early on as possible at Southern because we don't want you to get to the university and not know where you're going or what you're doing or who to turn to when you need help. There are people connecting you with other people, and that's just like my favorite thing about Southern. I will also say we're a social justice institution. That's just a big focus to us. If you drive by right now, you'll see a Black Lives Matter banner really big on our bridge. It's a conversation that we're having throughout with our students. We really want to make sure that we're having these difficult conversations, even though we are still a predominantly white institution. About 40% of our students are minority. And that's something that's really important to us, that diversity matters and these conversations matter. We just hired a new vice president of diversity, equity, and inclusion because we're really trying to do some serious work within social justice as an institution. And for students that have a passion in that or an interest in it, that's something that you can really dive into at Southern, have conversations with people, really make these strong connections about identity and belonging, and just do that in a safe space where you feel like you're learning and you're growing, not just in your major, but as a person.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you all so much. And kind of as our last question, I'm going to first direct it at Patricia, but it's the kind of thing that we'll have everybody kind of say a closing thought about. And that's just, what are any free resources students can use to help them understand and work through this process? And then also with that, just kind of like final piece of advice, last thing to leave these seniors or people applying soon with.
Sure. There's lots of information on our website about the college admissions process. I'm actually looking. We actually have oh, hold on. We have actually, and I'll put that on the chat, a whole section of advice on putting together your application, advice on selecting high school courses, applying to Yale College FAQs. So that's very helpful information. I think you guys as Reach mentors, you guys are a wonderful resource as well. And so I will be happy to share that on the chat with the link. So, and also, again, I just want to reiterate, and I know we've all said this, if you have any questions, don't be shy about contacting me, the Yale Admissions Office. We will be more than happy to answer any questions that you have by phone or by email. So don't be shy to reach out. That's a free resource. And Leilani?
Yeah, I was going to say we're the best resource. Just give us a call. Half of our staff is still working remotely, but we're still answering the phones. All of us are here. We're ready to help. That's a great free resource. I just put another one in the chat that I wanted to share, which is our financial literacy. We have a great financial literacy advisor at Southern who will meet with families, prospective students, and talk to them about what it means to pay for college, what cost looks like, not for the first year, but for all 4 years or for 6 years if you want to get a master's. So this is a free resource. You don't have to be attending Southern to get in contact with him. You can just say, hey, I really want to know more about how to pay for college. And you can set up an appointment. We do them virtually right now, but usually they're in person. And that's a really great resource, especially if you want to talk a little bit more about financial aid, loans, the difference between good loans and bad loans, just different things about paying for college that sometimes don't make any sense. I still don't get all the things. Lou DeLuca will help you through them. So that's a great free resource at Southern. Nick.
Sure. Yeah. When it comes to resources, there are so many. The one resource that I'm just going to give a quick shout out to is actually a scholarship opportunity. It's called the NECBAC Book Scholarship, and NECBAC is an association of admissions offices. It's the Northeast Consortium Bridging Access to College, and there are a number of institutions that are member institutions, including like Amherst, Northeastern, Boston University, Simmons, Fairfield. Like there are a whole number of them out there. And every spring we award anywhere from $750 to $1,000 in a scholarship. So you just apply for it, and the topic generally focuses around diversity, access, and inclusion, and equity, and the prompt differs year to year, but you get the point. And if selected, there are 7 scholarships total. If selected, obviously you would have that scholarship. So if you are attending one of those institutions, don't hesitate to apply for that scholarship. It's not something run through the schools themselves. It's run through the association, and I'll put the link in the chat as well. But that's kind of the unique resource, I guess, that I know of. But of course, there are so many resources with the college process. And I'm so sorry, I totally forgot. Let's pass it on over to Kayla.
So I hate to sound very repetitive, but I would agree that the counselors here are the best resources. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but if you happen to be in the admissions process and you send me an email, or if you just send the general admissions mailbox email address and email, people usually respond pretty quickly. I would say within 24 hours. Even if you call my line right now, it will come directly to my computer, to my Zoom meeting thing. So I'm answering questions all the time. I do realize that this is a very, very different time that we're living in. I found myself as an admission counselor, being a financial aid counselor, working in Res Life and student affairs, wearing all these different hats. And as an admissions counselor, you have to kind of wear different hats. And so I believe like a lot of people are well versed in a lot of the questions that you may have. And if we don't know, then we will definitely refer you to the appropriate resource. I'll throw it to Caitlin.
Sure. So yeah, I'll echo, we're a great resource for you, whether we're on campus or home, but also your school counselors or your guidance counselors at your high school. We're in close communication with them as well. So even if your question can't be addressed by them, they know us, they'll shoot us an email, they'll put us in contact. I'd say no matter what, if you have a question about the college process, start by asking someone and they'll probably point you in the right direction. So whether it's a college or university or whether it's your school counseling department, we're all in this together. We're all here to help and support you. So the first thing is just to ask someone.
I would add one thing. Sorry, I know I said I couldn't think of anything, but Caitlin just helped me out. I find that a lot of students, they're often going to the institutions that they're applying to, asking for financial opportunities. Your school counselors get a lot of scholarships through their office. I would even say if you're affiliated with a church, I know when I was younger, I got a scholarship through my church, or a community service organization. I know LEAP, I was also a LEAP counselor back in the day. They offer scholarships too. So I would really tap into those opportunities, and not just think of like how much money the institution's giving you, but you probably have to do some legwork as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all of that advice, and thank you for this really fruitful discussion over the past hour and 10 minutes or so. Like I said, this is going to continue to live for a few more months on our YouTube channel, and we'll be actively using it and pointing our mentees towards it as they go through the application process this fall. But thank you all for shedding light on this process and for providing all of this great, great advice. And we're really, really grateful that you took the time to be here with us today.
Yeah, we're really